wonder why nothing exciting ever happens around here.
This is Orthoclase. It is both a common and a rare gemstone. It is a member of the feldspar family and a very common material on Earth. It's also very, very rare to find gemmy, facet quality orthoclase. Large, clean, vibrant yellow examples of facet grade orthoclase are primarily found in Madagascar. Orthoclase rough is available from my favorite rough dealers from time to time, but all the rough I've seen always seems to be old stock out of Madagascar. Never any new findings. But who knows? Anyway, I got this rough from Joe H. several years ago, and even then it was called old stock by Joe. I have seen some orthoclase available from Thomas S. It's also old stock from Madagascar, but I haven't seen a lot anywhere else. Now, as I said, large, gemmy, facet quality orthoclase is quite rare, so I decided to use a very unique design to cut this orthoclase. A design I've not cut before, but being from the great state of Wyoming, I always wanted to cut. The design is by Jim Perkins and is called the Wyoming Star. I'm not 100% sure of what Wyoming Star Jim references this design to be with, but I believe it's the Wyoming Star on the Great Seal of the state of Wyoming. Now, in that state seal, there is a star with the number 44 in it. And no, the number 44 is not a reference to Hank Aaron's uniform number when he broke Babe Ruth's home run record. It's not a reference to Reggie Jackson, Willie McCovey, or even Jerry West's uniform numbers either. It's a reference to Wyoming being the 44th state added to the Union. Anyway, I think that is the star that Jim Perkins named to design the Wyoming Star after. But please let me know in the comments if any of you have more information, because I'm just guessing. Okay, I've done some minor preforming around our orthoclase, knocking off some of the odd shapes of it and getting it kind of round the way I want it so that I can cut the design I want. So now, since it's going to be a round, I'll put it in our Ultratech. And in this case, I'll use the key dot feature of the Ultratech and put it in, and it fits one way. But you don't have to worry about that key dot feature. That helps when you transfer the stone. Now I just tightened up the dop retention screw, and when I transfer the stone, the other dop that I use will also have a keyed feature, and they'll supposedly be lined up perfectly. I still double check the alignment to make sure. But now we're ready to cut our first tier or row of facets on the Pavilion. Okay, I finished the first row or tier on the Pavilion, and the designer calls this a preforming step. And it's because later on these facets will be cut away by the other facets, but in this preforming stage you make a temporary center point, a TCP. And now I'm going to skip the next two rows or tiers and go straight to the 90-degree angle and kind of cut our girdle to size our stone. And then I'll come back and cut the rest of the tiers. Okay, I've kind of did a little bit of preforming on the girdle, so now I've got the stone into pretty much where around. There's going to be another row of girdle facets that I'll cut out, but I'm not worried about that right now. Now I can look at this stone and see what else I need to do, and I can see a little bit of damage here into the stone that if I bring the Pavilion down a little bit more, it'll clean that up, as well as some of this that needs to be cleaned up. So the question is, can we bring the Pavilion down some more and still leave enough for the upper half of the crown of our stone? And that's where I use the C to W ratio from the instructions. That's the one ratio that I use quite a bit. And the C to W is the crown to width ratio of, in this case, it's 0.178. So the way you figure it out is you measure the width of the stone, and you can figure it's about 20, it's close enough to 20. And so you take 20 times the C to W ratio of 0.178. So if you take 20 times the C to W ratio of 0.178, you end up with 3.56 millimeters, and that's how much you need for the crown, or upper half of the stone. But also you want to allow for the girdle, and I allow 0.5 millimeters, so about 4.06 millimeter is about how much space you need and still be able to cut a crown. So you set your calipers up at about a little over 4. Doesn't have to be exact right here because you're going to still grind a lot more as you work through your facets, but I'll put about 4.06, and then you see if you have enough space on the crown, and I do. In fact, I can cut all this through all this surface damage and bring the pavilion down, and I'll still have enough for the crown, so I'm sitting pretty good. So I'll bring the pavilion down a little bit, and then we'll move on and go ahead and cut the first couple of facets on the pavilion. Okay, I just went from a 220 grit topper preforming to cut this facet with a 600 grit sintered lap. It's still preforming, but you can really see the difference between a 220 and a 600 grit lap. So I'll continue to go around it with the 600 grit sintered lap. This orthoclase is looking nice. Okay, I've gone over our stone with a 320 grit topper. There's still two rows on the top I haven't done, but I've got the girdle, both the girdle tier rows done. And it does need to come in a little bit smaller, just a teeny bit right here. You see where I marked it with my Sharpie. I've got to get that cleaned up. So I'll make it a little smaller and bring the top down a little bit. But that'll happen as I go through my next couple of laps naturally. The next lap is going to be a 600 grit sintered lap, and then I'll go to the 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. And those will tighten this up, make it a little bit smaller and clean up that. Other than that, I don't see any other problems with this stone. There's plenty of room to cut the crown. I don't see any internal fractures. It's looking good for this orthoclase, so we'll continue to cut it. Okay, I've gone over the two rows on our pavilion, 2 of the rows, and with my 600 grit topper, and I'm ready to use my 3000 grit diamond on a bat lap. Now I did switch out 600 grit toppers. My other one was getting worn, so I swapped it out. And what I do when I swap them out is I take the old ones, the old toppers, this is the new one, and toppers are just thin metal laps that go on a master lap of some type because they're so thin. And they're good enough, they last quite a while, but they are used. And then I take my old toppers and I throw them in a pile, and then when I go to the USFK shows either in Tucson this year, I'll take all my worn toppers, and if somebody wants them, somebody new that has never bought them and wants to experiment with them, I'll give them to them. I also take my used up bat sticks and diamond sticks from Loose. This is a 3000 grit stick. It's still got some left, but it's at the end of the tube of toothpaste, so I'll take that with me and give it away. And if somebody was thinking about buying a diamond stick but didn't want to spend the money till they know if it's going to work for them or not. And then I also have, here's a cerium oxide stick. I've kind of worn it down from a big old stick to kind of just a nub that's left, but it is enough for somebody to use for a while if they've never tried it and want to try it out before they invest in buying a new stick. So I'll have those. I'll give them away at Tucson at the USFK show. So on with cutting my Orthoclase. Okay, I wanted to show you this facet. I cut this with the 3000 grit diamond on the bat lap. This facet and this facet were both 600 grit diamond toppers. And this is not the way it should work. I mean, each row that you cut, as you go through your lap, should make it more like polish. So this is, our Orthoclase is not reacting to the 3000 grit diamond on the bat lap the way I'd like. It's almost like, with some stones you get an effect called the orange peel. This would be, if it is, it's a very minor type of orange peel, but it's like the texture of the outside of an orange peel. And that's what I see here. So I could go back and recut it with the 600 and then try it again with something finer than a 3000, but it looks like my 3000 grit diamond on bat lap's not the right grit to use on this particular stone. So I'm going to switch, but I'm not going to go back and recut it with the 600. I'm going to switch to a 8000 grit diamond on a bat lap and see how that does. So let's give that a try. Okay, that's much more like a pre-polish on when I use the 8000 grit diamond on a zinc lap. I don't have a bat lap for my 8000K diamond. I have a bat lap for my 3K, 13K, 60K, and 100K, but not my 8K. I use a zinc lap, which works fine. Maybe better, who knows. But for some reason, this Orthoclase, this 3K diamond on the bat lap, just isn't the right lap for it. Happens with quartz a lot. So I just switched to my 8K lap and drive on. So I'll continue polishing, pre-polishing the Pavilion or bottom half of our Orthoclase. Okay, I pre-polished up our Orthoclase with 8000 grit diamond on a zinc lap, and then I've polished the first row. That's these little facets right here. There's 6 of them all the way around. So you can see the difference between a polished facet and a pre-polished facet. And to polish them, I'm using cerium oxide in my tin lap. So we'll continue to polish the Pavilion and see how that goes. Okay, the Orthoclase polished right up with cerium oxide on a tin lap. I thought I was going to have to go to my Spectrum Ultra laps, but I didn't have to. Tin lap did just fine. So now I'll transfer the stone and cut the upper half. Now, my tin lap, let me show it to you, is scored. You can see the little scoring that's been done to it. It wasn't intentional. I didn't intentionally score it, although in the old days people did. But some of the stones I've cut, the facets were pointed like kind of like a plow, and they cut into the lap. And I just want to show you that it doesn't mean you need to throw the lap away. It's not a problem. Again, in the old days, they used to score laps on purpose. So all I did was, when that happens, I run a piece of corundum, lab-created corundum, sapphire emerald, or sapphire ruby, over the lap to make sure it flattens out the little trench, and then I move on. It doesn't hurt a thing, didn't hurt a thing with this lap, and it polished up this Orthoclase nicely. I just want to show you that. A lot of people think they have to have their lap resurfaced or throw it away, replace it. You don't have to. It's perfectly fine if that mistake happens. Okay, you have to be careful when you transfer this particular design, transfer from the Pavilion to the crown. There's 2 rows of facets on the girdle, and they're different. So the first row or tier is the P3, and those correspond with the P1 on the Pavilion. And the P1 has a smaller kind of V shape than the P2. The P2 corresponds with the P4 on the girdle. So I marked all the P1s, and then I lined up one facet, any one of the P1s. I called it either, lined it up with the 96, 16, 32, 48, 64, or 80 teeth, and then at a 90-degree angle, I had it sit on my flat precision block that comes from Ultratech, and then and that block I'm sitting on my flattest lap, which is a ceramic lap, and I use another block to get things up a little bit higher, and another block that's precision that I got from Amazon. And once it's set up there in the 90 degree, you just raise and lower the mast and move the facet around until that flat facet is sitting flush with that precision block. And then you just tighten the brass retention knob on your spindle, and that locks in the dop, and you're ready to cut the upper half or crown of our gemstone. Okay, I've gone over all of the facets on the upper half or the crown of our gemstone with a 320 grit topper. And now I'll move to a 600 grit, probably a topper. I still have to move some material, but it's taking shape nicely. So I'll continue to preform our gemstone. Okay, I finished the first 2 rows, which are the make up the bottom tier, bottom row. They're polished up like all these facets. You can see the difference between the polished and the pre-polished ones, and I polished them with a cerium oxide on a tin lap. They're polishing right up, no problem at all with this material. So I'll continue to polish the upper half or the crown of our gemstone. Okay, our Wyoming Star design is all polished up except for the table. So now I'll set up our stone to cut and polish the table, and we'll be finished with this piece of Orthoclase, and we'll soak it in the acetone to remove it from the top. We'll weigh it, measure it, and send it off to BOPIE. Okay, the table polished right up with the cerium oxide on a tin lap, and we're ready to soak our stone in acetone to remove it from the top, and we'll measure it and send it to BOPIE. I just cut this piece of Orthoclase, which is rare to find gemmy, large, and fashionable. I used a very nice design, which I'd not used before, called the Wyoming Star by Jim Perkins. I may have cut 1 or 2 other designs by Jim Perkins in the past, as he produced a lot of designs very well known. But I never tried the Wyoming Star before, and I'm glad I did give it a try. This gemstone looked great with this design. Let me know in the comments if you have cut Orthoclase before, or if you've ever heard of it before. And let me know what you think of the design. I do recommend you give this design a try, and as always, happy fastening, everyone.